Hi, I want to show you an overview of how to approach CSI, and we can discuss what you feel is the best way to approach the issue after them. Here is what we know we should do. To succeed in the world of car dealerships and in business in general, we believe that the three-legged stool is the best we can do. As soon as one of the three legs is off balance, the bench of success is off balance too. The first leg is the financial one. If all I do is talk numbers, hours sold per work order, gross profit, inventory turnover rate to my employees, or if, on the contrary, I hide all the information from them, that makes the leg of my stool longer or shorter. The second leg is customer satisfaction. If I don't allocate the resources and coaching needed to serve my customer well, I'm not creating loyalty and the stool is still out of balance. And finally, there is the employee commitment leg. If I don't have anything in place to retain good employees and keep them engaged, I end up with a major staff turnover problem, which costs me a fortune, and obviously the stool is also out of balance. All points are equally important and need to be worked on accordingly to get to the ultimate goal, customer loyalty. Our team have the tools to help with all the legs of the stool. Our team have the how and the what of the equation. We will show you that the main opportunity is very often not in the what to do or the how to do it. Most of the time, it is all about the will to do it, the behavior tied to this will. We've learned that the customer loyalty depends on one or all of those four factors. We call them the 4 P's of retail. People can be loyal because of price. Costco and Walmart are good examples of this. When you think about low price, those are 2 good examples. Customers can be loyal also because of the product. Apple, Starbucks are good examples. All customers know they pay more for an Apple cell phone or a coffee at Starbucks, but they do it anyway. And finally, people can be loyal to a company because of its people and processes. The person they see when the customer get there and how they do their business. The real question is, what do we have the most control and influence over? Do I control the price in the automotive world? Not really, except that the price will always go down. So what happens if I lower my price? I lose my profit margin and ultimately it will affect my paycheck. So I don't have much control over price. Do we have influence or control over the product in the automotive industry? The car is as it is, the part is as it is, and the maintenance program or extended warranty are as they are. I have no control or influence over the product. Do I have control or influence over the way we do business? So the process? Do we have control or influence over the behavior and attitude of my staff? Absolument! And that is the good news. We have control and influence over those which have the greatest impact on the 3 leg of the stool we saw earlier. Completely satisfied on a survey just means we have good process in place and we do it most of the time. We are good, we are not great. Where do you get your highest gross? Satisfied or dissatisfied customer? Similarly, if you have a customer who is dissatisfied and you go back and look at the deal, was there any gross in it? In most cases, no. In every store we look at, it's the engaged customer who comes back most often and provides the highest grosses. It does not have to be like that. Apple customers are so loyal, they make excuses for products that break or don't work right. They have an emotional attachment to the brand beyond reason. Some stores have customers that will defend them if they hear negative feedback, or they will excuse them if something went wrong. They will say to their friends something like, usually they are not like that. That is engagement. If I had to give a definition to the word engagement, it would be this: an emotional connection without reasoning. Unless I'm mistaken, everyone wants to do business with someone who will offer these 4 elements: the trust, the respect, the transparency, and the relationship. Engagement is a good business plan. On this chart, you have 3 kinds of customers. The new one, he does not know you and you don't know them. The referral, the one that say, hey, You want to have a new car? You have to see Mark at ABC Motors. And you have the repeat customer, the one that buy you a vehicle year after year and comes for service. And on the other side, we have our KPIs. So, in average, who will give you the biggest growth? The answer I get most of the time with group of people is the repeat customers. Who will give you the best CSI? The answer I get most of the time is the repeat customers. Who are the easiest to close? The answer I get most of the time is the repeat customer. Who creates the least amount of problems after the sale? Again, repeat customer. And finally, who provides the best word of mouth? The answer I get most of the time is repeat customer. So can you explain me why a lot of dealerships spend most of their time, money, and energy with the customer that are giving them the smallest gross CSI, closing rate, word of mouth, and the one that creates the most problems? It does not have to be that way. We have to look at it in a different way. You will not have engaged customer unless you have engaged employees. It has been our experience that the customers reflect back to us the attitude of the people they came in contact within the store. If an employee feels they receive no respect or does not feel a part of what the dealership is trying to accomplish overall, sooner or later they will reflect the behaviors that makes them feel that way to the customers who come to the dealership. And according to the Gallup polling firm, most companies end up with three groups of people when it comes to engagement. To give you a clear picture of what this represents, imagine there's a piece of paper in the middle of the showroom. The highly engaged people who make up 25% of the workforce, usually managers, key employees, will see the piece of paper and bend down to pick it up. They understand that the leadership isn't about the words, it's about the actions. The engaged people enjoy working at the facility, and if they see that their boss see them, they'll bend down and pick up the piece of paper. If they don't think anyone is watching them, they'll walk right past without seeing it. And finally, there's what I call the dark side of the force, people who are disengaged. One thing for sure, they'll never see the piece of paper or bend down to pick it up. In fact, they're probably the ones who left it on the ground. It does not have to be this way. In fact, you have to move some of the disengaged and some of the engaged toward the highly engaged people with all the benefits that brings: more profitability, more productivity, less absence, etc. I'm sorry to say this, but I'm not a smart man. But there is something that I understand very well is how to make money. You have the sales, the expenses, and what is left at the bottom line is the profit. So let me ask you this. What is the company's biggest expense? Employee salary and benefit is the correct answer. What if we would just improve employee engagement by 10%? How much of an impact would it have on the bottom line and all those KPIs? They are your internal customer. They hear and see everything and are the best to provide insights. You can't buy team member engagement with compensation. You can't buy customer engagement with price. Everything happens in the relationship you build with them. Don't get me wrong, money is important, but it is not the only thing. You probably already know this. Managers account for almost 70% of all factors that impact employee engagement. Another way to say this is that if you were to take all of the other factors that affect how employees feel about working in your store, where you are located, compensation, building, software, etc., and add them all together, they account for less than half the impact that the manager has in creating an engaged workforce. Many of you have seen significant changes in the department simply by changing managers while keeping employees, facilities, and inventory level the same. So a lot of what we're going to talk about here will focus on managers and how they impact what is happening in the work unit. If you think of all the employees who work in your store and rate them on a scale of 1 to 10, the 8 to 10, the 4 to 7, and the 1 to 3. When you ask the manager which of these three groups take up the most of their time, which one do you think they'll answer? The 1 to 3s. If you have something important to do, who are you going to ask? The 8 to 10. So if I'm working in this environment and I'm performing well, you're not going to talk to me that much and you're going to give me the hardest job. In this kind of culture, if I'm your boss and I say, come and see me at 4 p.m., what am I thinking as an employee? We can only sell what we own. If we don't embrace the concept, we won't be able to get buy-in for employees. We have worked with many dealers and managers for many years to determine what differentiates a manager who has engaged an employee and one who does not. We have a long list of best practices utilized by the high-performing manager, but that only tells us what needs to be done. The more important question is why? Why don't all managers embrace these practices? The answer to this question lies not in the fact about what needs to be done. These are indisputable. More engaged employees perform better, but in the beliefs of the managers themselves. If I put a gun on their head and I say, do it, do you think they would do it? It is never a matter of what. It is always a matter of beliefs. Let me show you an example. If we were in the lifeboat business years ago and we made a call on the people who were building the Titanic, we would have been pretty disappointed with how many lifeboats we were able to sell. Why didn't they buy the lifeboats? They believed that the Titanic couldn't sink. Fact, it did sink. Perhaps we could have made a better presentation, bringing in an expert in how things sink and showing picture of huge iceberg floating around in the North Atlantic. Do you really think we would have sold any additional lifeboats? Maybe a few. What would be our growth on those boats? Very little. Because the core belief of our customer hadn't changed. Now, let's fast forward our story. The Titanic struck the iceberg and the boat's sinking. If we came along with our lifeboats then how many do you think we could sell? And what would be our growth on these sales? What changed from the time we originally tried to sell our lifeboats until the time when the boat was sinking? The facts have not changed. The boat was always capable of sinking and the lifeboats were always a necessary purchase. What changed were the beliefs of the people who had to spend the money. And so we come back to this key learning. We can only sell what we own. If we do not believe that customer engagement will be necessary to our success in the future, then we will not do the things required to achieve that engagement. But be assured that this is not an engine overhaul, it's a tune-up. We're not talking about turning the dealerships upside down. We have some example of things dealers are doing. None of them are terribly expensive or complicated because it's already all about what's going on inside people's head, about changing their beliefs. I want to share with you now a short video of a general manager who has experienced the program we're presenting and who testifies about the impact and results achieved at his establishment.
The pain at the time was that we were failing on our NPS scores. You know, our scores with Toyota were not strong, and we had some real challenges keeping up with that and setting expectations properly with customers and things like that. And without any real traction for quite a few years. So I'll tell you, it turned those surveys around in a hurry. From net promoter scores of dipped down to low 70s for a couple of months. So obviously big problems right now. Last month was 93.6, and this month we're high 80s right now. So as a matter, I'm talking sales in particular on that one. Service is typically high 80s for us right now, above pace for the province and nationally actually. So I'll tell you, it's made a big difference for us. And in talking to the managers again, preparing for this conversation, I realize how much they still develop, or they still appreciate that development and that training that we got, and the appreciation they have for people overall. So I would say that survey was a big impact for us. What we learned from those surveys about our employees was what really was the turning point for me in understanding what we needed to do, but also what they needed from us. They were tools that we used, and I'll use the tools that you shared with us to explain that. So one of the big ones was the chips. So it's just being mindful and understanding all the time that you've got to be, you got to catch them doing the right things, not just the wrong things. And handing all the managers those poker chips. They're all over the place here now. I see them all the time. They're still on their desks. They still use them, and it's a great tool. With our technicians, the communication with them, because we had obviously technicians are a different breed, and they're interesting people to get to understand and know. Those people had a very difficult time in opening up to us and letting us know what the problems were, because management's never going to do anything about it anyway, right? So I would say that this open door that we have now with them, and the trust that we began to foster there, that we do regularly with our huddles in the afternoon with the technicians, are what allows us to maintain that trust. And the door's open now when we hear about the problems before they become huge problems. Those are the two big tools that really made the difference for us. Just that constant communication with them. You can't let it go. It's something you got to pay attention to every month. It's so ingrained now in what we do, right? That it's just what we do now. Something I would change if we did it again, yes. I would have done it sooner. But I definitely would keep a little more frequent contact with them, because the momentum after the surveys is super important. Your ability to communicate and open up those lines, that was everything. If you don't have that, where do you go? You don't have any trust. If you can't communicate with them, if you're always behind a closed door and they can't talk to you and see you every day and see that you're a regular person and know that they're a regular person, and good people with families and everything like that, they appreciate more, and they trust more, because they know we know that. So that was one of the big takeaways for me.
Thank you for listening, and we look forward to talking with you again and discuss this project together.